The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar today on Newforma ConstructEx. My name is Allison Whitney, and I'm the product manager for ConstructEx here at Newforma. Hope everybody is staying warm today if you're in the middle of the polar vortex like I am, but hopefully we'll give you some good information today as we go through some of the features of ConstructEx. So to start off, I want to give you just a little bit of a quick agenda here, a couple housekeeping items. So first off, we'll just talk in general about Newforma ConstructEx, give you the basics, kind of what we do with that, and some of the problems we solve. But what I really want to focus on today is some of the document management capabilities we have in ConstructEx. I think a lot of people may be more familiar with some of our RFI and submittal workflow pieces, but I think there's some real value in the document management pieces as well that are a little less known. So I want to make sure that we go through that. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the high points there. We'll go through a demonstration of those capabilities as we go through the bulk of the webinar. If you have questions as we go along, please feel free to post them in the questions or chat area, and we'll take a look at those at the end of the webinar after the demo. And then once we're done with the demo, if you have additional questions, after the webinar today, I'll give you some information on how you can reach out to our team to continue learning more about ConstructEx. Excuse me. So let's jump right into it. So I want to talk a little bit first about, before ConstructEx, what happens when you're managing your documents and your project workflow during a construction project. So what we see very often is that every player in the project, so the contractor, the architect, the engineer, the owner, tends to have their own sort of siloed systems. So what happens is, of course, you're all using separate systems to address the project management needs, and that makes communication, making sure everyone's on the same page, making sure everyone has current information, can get kind of tricky because everybody's got their information sort of in its own spot. What we do with ConstructEx is we really bring all of that together into a centralized system so that you've got all of the information for all of the team members coming through this centralized system. You get a single source of truth, and you can everybody have essentially instant access to the same information at the same time. You can keep that information flowing through the project, but it's in a single location, so you have the confidence that everyone's seeing the same thing and can get on the same page more easily. So again, before ConstructEx, as we're going through a workflow, think about typically how you communicate on a project. And we have, you have your subcontractors submitting RFIs and submittals to the GC, very often through email. And then the GC has to take the manual step of logging that in an Excel spreadsheet. And then they manually update that cover sheet with the information in the transmittal. And then they manually download everything and mark it up from the subs before they package it all up and send that off to the architect, who then goes through their own process where they're going to go ahead and update their logging. And then they're going to update the cover sheet with their information, their stamps, and so on. And then they're going to email that to all of their secondary reviewers and consultants, who are then going to take similar steps, right? They're going to go through and log and update and so on. And then all of that manual labor and steps takes place and has to happen again on the return trip, from the reviewers back to the architect, back to the GC, and finally to the subcontractor. So what you end up with is a lot of administrative overhead, a lot of manual work and time, and a lot of potential spots for something to go wrong, right? You don't attach the right email, you don't attach the right drawing, something happens in that spreadsheet that isn't updated correctly. So a lot of places where things can get kind of messed up at that point. So with ConstructEx, what we do is we really streamline that process. We have a built-in workflow that really lets you keep all of that information in a single site, again, where everyone can get to it when they need to, as they need to, and you minimize that amount of upload, download, information that you might have entered in those transmittals manually as part of an automated cover sheet. So the subcontractor can upload their files right to the GC as part of a submittal or RFI. The GC can take a look, mark up if they need to, and then send it via the system, via the automated workflow over to the design team, the architect, who in turn then can use that to send that information right off to their engineers, consultants, reviewers, and to the owners' teams as well. And then all of that return process, so once the reviewers have had a chance to look, comes back through the system again and gets returned back to the GC and eventually to the subcontractor. And so what's really nice is that with the workflow, in all of these steps, there's also automated email notifications. So if you're being asked to review something, you're going to get a notification about it. You'll get a notification when something comes back and is ready for you to close out to your subs, for example, if you're the GC. So lots of pieces of this are really designed to streamline that workflow for you and make it easy for everyone to be on the same page, to have that same information, those same documents available. Excuse me. So that's the sort of 30,000-foot view of the workflow, and I think that's what most people are familiar with as far as looking for something to manage the the construction process or managing those RFIs and submittals. We do have a lot of pieces there that really help you kind of lock down capabilities to what each role needs to do in that workflow, so everyone gets what they need. However, we do have a lot more to ConstructEx than just the RFI and submittal workflow. And that's really what I want to focus the demo on today as we're going through. So really what we have here is we have document management capabilities. Now, this is really focusing on a lot of the pain points that we see. So, if you are, for example, trying to manage your, how people access the documents, the current set of drawings and specs, how can you be sure that the folks in the field have the current drawing, have the current sheet? Well, one of the things that's hard to do is tracking. If you're tracking via spreadsheets and emailing things back and forth, there's not a guarantee that someone's not going to grab an old email and grab the wrong sheet, and then that can cause all sorts of problems. So what we can do with document management pieces in ConstructEx is we really can help you maintain a current set of drawings and specs with immediate access for all team members. So as soon as something is updated, whether that's early on in the process when maybe you're putting out CD sets, things like that, or addendums as you go through, or things like ASIs, change orders, all of those can affect the current document set. So what we allow you to do is upload that information and link it to a sheet set, for example, that automatically shows the current revision. So everybody on the project has immediate access, can easily view and download that information. And we do track the revisions during construction. I'll show you how that works. We also see people upload reference sets. So again, I just mentioned, you might upload your 100% CD set as kind of a line in the sand, a place to start as a reference point, and then you can continue to update based on that. And managing construction documents, things like ASIs, change orders, potential change orders, whatever is part of your project process, we can set that up and help you manage that in the system as well. And going back even a step before that, we have tools available that will even let you manage the bidding process. So if we're early in the project process and you want to have a way to start tracking, bid sets, things like that, we can really do that and allow you to share those with potential contractors at the point of bidding. So it's a way to manage even earlier than I think a lot of people are aware of with with ConstructEx. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump right into the demo because that's the fun part. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into ConstructEx and kind of show you around here. So if you haven't seen it, ConstructEx this is the main landing page when you get into ConstructEx. And a couple of things to know about ConstructEx just as a general note. It is a single sign-on. So if you're working on one project or 50 projects, you log in once and you'll see all your projects in the main screen here. And that's what all of these lines are. These are the projects that I have been invited to work on as a team member. And so you can see that I've got a few that are gray. The one that I'm going to work on is going to be this one that's in the bold text here. And we do also have the option to favorite items. So by default, it'll be alphabetical. But if you have ones you're working on that are maybe would fall off the screen, otherwise you can favorite it and it'll push it to the top of the list. So when I want to work on a project, I just need to make sure it's the current project. It's going to be in bold here. And then across the top, I'm going to have all of my different modules as part of that project. So you can see under construction administration, there are my submittals and RFIs, and under project communication, things like meetings and message forms. But what we're going to focus on today is really the document management piece here. So how you're logged in, and this is just something to keep in mind with ConstructEx, how you're logged in and your role on the project really affects what you're able to do and what you're able to see, but especially with the workflow. However, document management, again, the intent here is that we're giving you a single source of truth that everyone on the project can see project information and know that they're looking at the current information. So what I want to do first is talk a little bit about finding that current drawing set or sheet set, right? Because that's important to make sure everyone's literally on the same page. So I'm going to go into document management here, and I'm going to go into my sheet index. And that is going to show me a list of all the sheets that I have, the current project. So what I'm looking at here is you can see that I've got a category of the discipline. I've got my sheet number and title. And then the part that's interesting here at the moment is this current package list. So what this is showing me is that the current version of this particular sheet is coming from this particular package. And on the right-hand side here, I've got a number of logs. So this is also a tool that we use throughout ConstructEx to let you, drill in a little bit easier, slice and dice the data to make it easier to find what you want. So for example, let's say I want to look at my civil site sheets. So I can just click that, and it's going to reduce this list to all of the sheets I have that are related to the civil site discipline. And again, I can see where these pieces of information are coming from. So if I want to drill in a little bit more, I'm going to jump into this particular sheet here, civil site lot layout. So I'm just going to click into it, and that's going to take me into the details of the sheet. And what I want to show you, there are a couple important things here, mostly right up at the top. So I can see here's this current file. And with the current file, I can see here's the PDF. So I could just click that and view that, download that if I needed to. And then just as importantly, I can see I have the source. So this is the current sheet, and the current sheet is part of this addendum package. So if I wanted to go take a look at the rest of the addendum package, this is a hyperlink, I could just jump to that package if I wanted to. And then the other piece that I think is interesting as you move through a project is this view history. So what view history is going to do is show you the history of this particular sheet. So I can see that as of the current date, my current sheet is coming from this addendum package. But then I can look back through the history of it and see, what was the initial source of this sheet? What were, some of the interim steps? So if I needed to go back for reference purposes and get to any of those, I'd be able to do that as well. So those pieces are right there, and those are really nice. Now, other things that are nice here, I'm just going to make a quick note, and we'll come back to this later as well, is that you'll notice I have a list of all of these particular reference items. So one of the powers of ConstructEx is really it lets you cross-reference and cross-link items in the project as you're working to make it easy to find that information. So let's say something about this file changed because of an RFI. Well, I can see here now that that RFI or RFIs are linked, and if I wanted to go get the details of that RFI, I could just go ahead and click through here. Again, it's a hyperlink. It would take me to that information. And so you can really link out to any other types of items in the system. I'm just going to go back to my, my civil site log for a minute here, back out to the sheet index. So as I mentioned, one of the keys with this particular piece of the puzzle is that we want to be able to let people get quick access to the current sheet set, right? So an individual, or let's say I needed to grab all my civil site sheets, and I want to make sure I've got the most current version. So when you're in the sheet index, what you can do is just scroll to the bottom, and we've got this piece called Download Current Set. And where this is really nice and where this comes in handy is what I'm going to do, I'm going to just go ahead and click on Download Current Set. And what it's going to do for me is it's going to go ahead and pull up a dialog that shows me as of today's date by default. So as of today's date, here are all of the current full-size sheets for my civil site discipline. It's going to tell me which package they came from as well. And at this point, I can either select all of them, or I could select just individual ones that I needed. And then what I can do is hit download at the bottom of the list. And that will download all of the files I've selected as a zip file. So then I can grab that, I can take that on site, I can take that to my meeting, whatever I need to do with that information. But I have the confidence that I've got the most current set of sheets from the project as it stands today, and knowing that everybody on the project has sight lines into that exact same information. If for some reason I needed to grab a historical set from a different date, I could actually just enter a different date here, and it would go back through that history and find what was the current sheet, current version of that sheet for that particular date as well. So it's a really powerful tool, really easy way to get insight into the current information for the project. Another thing that I want to make just a quick point of is, sometimes we, especially when we are, looking at, let's say maybe we have subs or reviewers who aren't in the project as often as maybe our main GC, our architects. They may need a little bit of help to understand how to do a process or how to download that sheet set. So one of the other advantages with ConstructEx is we actually have this piece over on the right-hand side here called Show Me How. And this, again, is linked to what roles you're in, but essentially it's our help and it's a walkthrough. So if I go in and search for download a current set of documents, I can start this up, and what it's going to do is literally walk me through what I need to do to accomplish that task. So let's say I want to go to my civil site. I can go ahead, it's going to take me to the next step. It's going to tell me to download current set. So it's going to take you, hold the hand and take you through those steps that we just looked at. And there are walkthroughs for any number of tasks inside the system. So it's just a really nice, powerful tool. The advantage is, in different from a traditional help system where, you read about it and then you do it. This takes you through the steps of doing it, helps you get that, but at the end of that process, you've completed that task in the project, so you don't have to double your work or anything like that. So just wanted to mention that as one of the things that I really think is a nice piece with ConstructEx and helping people get through the processes successfully. So back to document management. As we're looking at our document management list here, let me just get back up on top. So as we look at our document management modules, another piece that we have available here, the two we're going to focus on for a little bit here, the construction phase and design bid packages. So what I want to look at first is construction phase documents. So again, this is really, we're kind of going into the process where, we have things like ASIs, we have change orders, we have all these construction administration documents that are going back and forth through the life of the project. And we want to be able to manage that information, share that information, and make it available to the team. So one of the ways we are able to do that is doing that with construction phase documents. And, instead of having to manage it with spreadsheets, things like that, as you can see, I've got sort of my initial screen here. Now, if you look down in this list here at the terms, you can see these are the particular types of construction phase packages I've defined for my project. This is a configurable list. So as you're setting up your project, let's say you use different document types, or there's something else you want to use or don't want to use, different terminology, you can configure that. Your admins can configure that on project setup, and then this will be customized to what you're used to working with in your project. This just happens to be in my demo project what I've set up. And so again, if I want to, I can go through to any of these and just go, let's say I want to look at all the issued ASIs, I can go and get a quick list of all of those ASIs and then click into any of those as I need to. So at this point, let's say that I want to create an ASI. I need to reissue a sheet because there was an RFI that came through, it changed it, and I need to reissue the sheet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just add a package. And as I do this, I'm going to pick the package type. So again, this is going to match that list, sort of what we've got over here is the types. So I'm going to just go ahead and create an ASI. The number and revision number are going to fill in for me automatically. And then I just need to put in a title so we all know what we're looking at. So this is going to be a reissue of this particular sheet. I do need to put in the issue date. This is going to be the date I'm actually issuing this this ASI. So it doesn't have to be today. It could be a date earlier or later, just kind of depends on when you're getting around to the part where you're actually uploading the information to the system. And then you can put in an additional description if you'd like to, just depending on what the intent is of this particular document. Now, one of the things we can do with the construction phase documents is we can kind of manage where something is in the process based on the status. So we don't have to use a status, and again, you can adjust these as you need to, but with the status, let's say this is something that needs to be maybe like a pay app or something like that, that needs to be reviewed a little bit more. What we can do is set it to a certain status here, and then create some logs to let us really track that. So if I'm responsible for doing a contractor review on something, I can do a quick check on a log to see, are there any ASIs in a status that requires me to look at it? And we can kind of go through there. There's a comment piece to construction phase documents as well that let you enter your comments and change statuses and kind of move it through a process that way. So it gives you a lot of flexibility around how you can manage these documents and have people touch them. You do also have the option to require someone to review it, and that will kick off an email to them to make sure that they have had a chance to review this information. These other pieces here are again, configurable based on your project. There are other ways to kind of split out information, slice and dice it as you need to help team members find information more easily. And then I'm going to get down to my attachments section here. So what I'm going to do at this point, obviously, is I want to now upload the new version of this sheet so that it can get linked back to the sheet index so that everybody on the project has visibility into it and is working off the current document. So I'm going to just go ahead. You can drag and drop, or you can choose files depending on and browse depending on your preference. I'm just going to drop down in here real quick here. And I'm going to grab my updated sheet for this particular item. Now, when I'm working with the construction phase documents and the design bid documents as well, what we'll see here is that it's looking at this and it's looking at the name of the file here. And essentially it's zeroing in on this 206 piece. And what it's asking me over on the right here is, hey, is this file you're uploading, is this the new full-size sheet for this superstructure M206 that I have in the sheet index? And so it does a pretty good job of matching those. You know, if there was a dash here or a space here, it would pick it up as well. And I can say yes. And if I had multiple files I was uploading, of course, it would show that for each of them. And then what'll happen once I save this is that, or once I issue this, excuse me, is that this version will now become the latest sheet version for that sheet in the sheet index. And as soon as I issue it, that's going to happen. So there's no worry about emailing out and nobody checked their email for a couple hours and they were working off the wrong one. As soon as this is issued, it's going to be available to the team. Excuse me. And as I mentioned, you can cross-reference down here. So let's say, as I said, let's say there was an RFI that caused this whole change here. I can go ahead and just link, and I could pick the appropriate RFI. I'm just going to grab one here, and then save that, and you'll see it's listed here. Once I issue this, it's going to become that hyperlink that we saw when we were first looking through the project. And then I can notify in my module configuration. I can set up people to always be notified when a package is issued. And then in addition, I can ad hoc add any other users who I want to be notified by email that this sheet is coming out, that this is being issued via this ASI. So what I'm going to go ahead and do then is I'm going to go ahead and issue this. And as that goes through, now I can see that this has been issued, and I can see the status here. I can see the file, that it's linked to that sheet in my sheet index. I can see the history of what happened. I can see if there were any revisions and so on. So that is the basic process. And if I go back to my ASIs now, so this is ASI 14, which I can see here. And if I go back to my sheet index and I look for my M206 sheet, what I'll see is that here is that sheet, and I can see that the current package for it is now that ASI 14 that I just issued. So it's really pretty instantaneous. I know then that everybody is going to go ahead and have that update. So that is the essence of working with the construction phase documents. So just to jump back in there for a second, if I do look at something like my ASIs, as I mentioned, you can select that status. I can see log here what status something is in. It's not going to apply to everyone if I don't select it, but if it has been selected, I can see that. I can also create a custom log that will specifically let me see just ones that are in a particular status as well to help me find what I need to work on. So beyond that, then I want to talk a little bit more about going backwards a little bit, if you will, in the process of the project. So if we jump back to the design bid packages, they work very similarly to the construction phase documents. And the idea is the same, that we're putting together, sort of central repository of the information for the project, somewhere that everyone can easily get to it and we can track that information. So again, what we see a lot is that a lot of customers will sort of use this as a line in the sand. They'll upload maybe their 100% CD package as a starting point, and then they'll go through that process and add addendums and whatever else they need to through the life of the project. Excuse me. However, I can also, as I mentioned before, and these will link back to the sheet index just as we were talking about before with the construction phase packages. But let's say I want to go back even earlier in the process. I mentioned at the beginning that one of the things we can do is not only can we make these documents available to our project team members. However, we can also make these available even before the project is in construction by uploading a bid package and making those documents available to potential contractors via an external share. And I just want to show you how that works because I think it's something that's underutilized, but it can still be a really powerful tool to let you keep track of all of this information for the project as you're going through the project, even from early stages. So I'm going to hop into, I have this bid package here. I'm just going to go hop into this. And what you'll see in here is, again, very similar to what we saw with the construction phase packages. You can put in a description and you can see here are all the attachments and I can see which sheets they're linked to. What I want to do though is I'm going to go down the page a little bit here. Again, I have revisions references just like I did with the construction phase packages. The part I want to focus on for a minute here is this external access section. So I have the option to enable this for any design bid package. If I do this, what I'm going to get is I'll get this web link here and a password, and I can set an expiration date on the package. So what I can do is create an email, send out an email to the companies I want to bid on this, and I can say, click this link and enter this password to download the bid set. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just go ahead and copy this link, and I'm going to hop over. I have another browser open and ready to go. Just paste that in there, and I'm going to jump in here and it'll say, hey, here's password required. And so since I've sent them that, I'm just going to jump back real quick and I'll copy that password and go back over here and go. And what this is going to do, it's going to take me to the basic information about that bid package that I just created. So here's the project information, here's the document number for that bid package that I created, the title, the issue date, if there's a category associated, that'll show up as well. And here's the description. So I do always recommend, if you're going to use this, that you put in a good description because this is what the bidders are going to see. So you can see here I've got some additional details. And then I've got the attachments. And these are all those sheets that were in that package, in that bid set. So I can either, as the user now, I can either download these individually or I can download them all as a zip file. But again, that streamlines that. I can get to this information and I can't get to anything else in the project. So as the design team, as the admin, you're all able to share this information out. You don't have to do double duty in packaging up an email with all these files and sending it out to someone. You can just direct them here and they can all grab the information as they need to. And like I said, you can put an expiration date on it so that if you only want that package to be downloadable for 30 days or 60 days or whatever is appropriate for your project parameters, you can set that up as well. So again, like I said, that's a piece I think that gets underutilized but can be a really important tool. And you can use it for any design bid package. It doesn't have to be a bid package. So if there's a reason you may need that during other phases of your project, you could certainly do that as well. And the last piece I want to talk about with document management here is the shared folders option, because really a lot of the things that we've talked about with the design bid packages and the construction phase documents are really geared around, having PDFs of sheets and things. So a file format that's easy to work with, easy to upload and download, pretty universal. But let's say you have other documents. We see sometimes people have, a spreadsheet that's a directory of subcontractors or team members, or there may be, you actually want to share out some of the, like your Revit or AutoCAD files, things like that. Things that don't fit into one of the workflows or one of the other modules. That's really where the shared folders module comes in. And the shared folders module is essentially like an FTP site, except it's contained within the project. And something I want to mention quickly about our ConstructEx projects as far as the overall process is that at the end of the project, we do provide you with an archive that includes all of the information that's stored in the project through the life of the project. So you get all of that information out. So again, this is a way to keep all of that information in a single place so it's archived as part of the project record at the end of the day when you're ready to close it out. That being said, you can see I have a folder structure here, and I can create whatever folder structure I need to. I can create, folders and subfolders. I can go ahead through and look. Let's say if I go into project files, you can see I have some JPEGs in here. I can upload whatever file type I need to, but you can see I have some DWG and Revit files in here as well. So really, this lets me be a little more open as far as what I want to create and how I want to share information. Part of this is that it is also, there's permission setting that can be done on these folders, similar to what you'd think about in like Windows security. So I can set permissions on this to allow someone to just view and download files. I can set permissions for them to also be able to upload files to a folder, and I can set permissions for them to be able to manage the folder. So rename it, delete it, that kind of thing. And then depending on those permissions, that controls which files and which folders I see as I'm working in here. We do also have the option, if you've uploaded a file to a folder and you want to let people know about it, you can send them a notification that, hey, something's been updated, we've updated a file in this particular folder, and they'll get that information as well. So that's something, if you're familiar with older versions of ConstructEx, that's a relatively recent add. That was a pretty high on the list request for a lot of our customers who use shared folders. So that is an option as well. So that is the main thrust of the demonstration here. I see it looks like we've got a couple questions, so let me take a look here and see what we've got. Let's see. Oh, let's see. Sorry, I have to expand this a little bit. It's very squished. Give me just a second in my interface here. Let's see. Can you view Microsoft Office files directly in the shared folders? So good question. So if I am in shared folders, there is the, excuse me, I'll hop back in there. So if I'm in one of these folders, I have this. You do typically need to download it to view it. There's not really a viewer option from inside the shared folders. It's really more about getting the information back and forth in a way that stays inside the project. Let's see. And someone else, I noticed a 500 megabyte file size limit in the form that was used to upload a file. So let's see, Joseph, I'm not sure where we were on that. There are some, I think if that was back in the like the design bid packages or the construction phase packages, there is a file limit, and that is typically, I'll just jump in here. Let's see. So if I go, I think you were looking here. Yeah. So the maximum file size is 500 megabytes per attachment. So yeah. So the individual file size for an attachment that we're uploading here is 500 meg. So you could have multiple attachments that were 500 meg. The idea when you're working in these modules is that we're hopefully uploading things that are going to be, either PDFs or something that's easily shareable with the team. So hopefully you're not getting that big, but you can do that, and you can have multiple ones. Just being aware, like any other website, if you're uploading large files, you may have to wait for a little bit of time for it to happen. All right, let's see here. What else? So good question there. Let's see, are there red light and comment capabilities? Yes. So another good question. So there is, so within I should take that back. And it depends, Joseph, so it depends on where you're looking. So we don't have a red line on the files directly from like a construction phase package. We do have a markup tool that is used as part of our review workflow for submittals and RFIs, and you can add markups, you can import your stamps, you can put comments and all that kind of thing. And then as part of some of our other modules, there are places where you can add comments and markup documents, but that is not currently part of the construction phase piece of the product. So good question there. All right, that's what I see. Let's see. Sorry, these are, I don't know why my question section is very small at the moment. So give me a second here. I'm just having to read small here. Let's see. Relying common capabilities. Okay. Is shared folders a place where files get copied to? So good question. So in shared folders, the files are actually copied there. It doesn't link back to anything like a server, like something behind the firewall or anything like that. When you do upload something to a shared folder, it does get copied there. So there's no link to anything on your file system at that point. Let's see. Can you track financial related data tied to the project? So we don't have any connectors or anything like that to any external financial systems from ConstructEx. So if you were doing, there's not really a direct link back to that kind of information. I mean, if you had certain pieces you wanted to share, you could probably either, depending on how you wanted to share it, you could create some different types of documents or packages in construction phase maybe. And one of the things I should have mentioned with construction phase packages is you can limit by package type or by document type access to those types. So let's say I was doing something like pay apps, I could limit permissions to view those pay apps to certain team members or certain groups of users. So there's some flexibility there. You could also upload some information to the shared folders if you wanted to. And again, you have the permissions to lock down information there, but there's no direct link to financial systems at this point. You're welcome, Joseph, you're welcome. Let's see, change order. So yeah, so you have the option to do that information, and there's a little bit of information on the financial systems. There are, let me jump back to my construction phase packages here. Again, there's not a direct link. There is an option if you put some budget information at the project level, you can, excuse me, you can enter some information as you're creating a, I grabbed the wrong one. As you're creating a document, it'll ask you if there's a change to the budget either via time or dollars, and you can enter that information in sort of as you're going and work with it that way. But yeah, there's not a direct contact or connection back. These are good questions, everybody. Thanks. Is there anything else? So let's see. Can you quickly show how to add a new user? Sure, I can absolutely do that. So when you're adding a new user, I'll do a couple things. So when you add a new user, you're going to go to, and this is something that admins do, you're going to go into the project team. And like I said, a lot of the stuff is role-based. One of the things I'd recommend is if you are interested in some of the other, especially the RFI and submittal workflow, on Newforma.com in the on-demand webinar section, there are a couple really good webinars, one really on optimizing the RFI and submittal workflow, and another sort of overview webinar on ConstructEx. So I'd highly recommend watching those if you haven't had a chance to yet. But when I come in here, I can go ahead and add a user, and it's pretty simple. I can just put in an email address here, and when I then submit that, the system's going to tell me one of two things. Either they're a brand new user, or this is somebody who's already working on at least one other project, and now I'm going to invite them to my project. So essentially what I would do then is I would pick the role I want them to play on my project, go through, fill in a couple other pieces of information, and then just add them to the project. The user gets an email invitation to the project. If they're already a user, it'll just tell them, hey, you've been added to this project. If they're a brand new user, it'll tell them they've been added to the project and give them information on how to log in for the first time. So good question. And then how does that flow through to shared folders? So with shared folders, it's actually a separate permissioning. So this is separate from the role that the user is playing on the project. And really, like I said, it's very similar to what you might be used to with Windows. So I can go in here, and again, I have to be an admin to do this. I can edit the permission settings, and I can see my users are organized by user type. So I can either enable different levels, either view, download, upload, or move, rename, delete for a particular folder for an entire type of user, user role, or for individual users. And it's simply a checkbox system, and then you save your changes. So good question. Yeah, so I can just go back to my folders here. Oh, there we go. All right, so let's see. So good question, Susan. Yeah, so assuming all parties need to purchase this program to use it. Actually, no. So what happens is the way, and our sales team can provide you with some more details on this, but essentially what happens is a license is purchased for ConstructEx based on the overall project value. So if it's a $30 million project value, there's a scale of how much you're charged. But essentially, once it's charged to a party, so we'll see sometimes people will roll it into their contract costs for the project, things like that. Who pays for it is a project team decision and part of that process. But essentially, it's paid once, and then you have an unlimited number of users for the project. You can have, so if you have subs who need to be in there for 2 weeks and that's it, we aren't charging you per user. It's really just the cost of a percentage of the overall project value is what the system costs, and you can add as many users as you need to for the project over the life of the project. Let's see. So do the documents reside on our servers or yours? So all the documents, anything you upload here is uploaded to the, we're on AWS, so are uploaded to our servers, the AWS servers for ConstructEx. So it doesn't link back to anything that's on your servers. It's all online in this case. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with our other product, Project Center, Newforma Project Center. That's an enterprise system where you do own servers and have to have those behind your firewall and have IT go through that piece of it. One of the advantages of ConstructEx from an overhead standpoint is really there's no installation. It's purely a website. So you come to projectcloud.newforma.com, you log in, you get started, and everybody goes from there. You don't have to worry about upgrading or updating. It's just on the site, and everybody has access to the information who you invite to the project. How secure is it? That's a good question. We've done a lot of due diligence to make sure it's secure as it can possibly be. I can follow up with you. We may have some additional documentation on that, but it's it's AWS servers, so we're working with a lot of that piece of it as well. So let me jump back. I just want to wrap up a couple things here, and whoops, sorry. There we go. That's fine. So just want to kind of wrap up here on a couple things, and I see we've got at least one other. Let's see, one other question, and then I'll probably wrap this up, and we can follow up on anything else as we go. So back to the pricing. Correct. Yes. So it is purchased by the project total. By a percentage of essentially the estimated project value. There's not a monthly subscription at all. We don't manage it this way. It's not a again, like with Project Center, we do some different subscription licensing there. This is a separate product from that, so we really do license it essentially per project value, and that's where the cost comes in. So it's really a one-time cost for that particular project. Now we do have some options if you think you want to spin up multiple projects. We do have the option for multi-project contracts as well, and that's similarly priced, but there's some different pieces that go into that. But essentially, we do price we essentially pay per project as far as that goes. So as far as continuing the conversation after this, lots of good questions, everybody. Thank you for participating. We've got, if you have questions about, sales, seeing demos, learning more, we've got our email, constructex@newforma.com. You can also call our general number, and they'll get you directed in the right direction. And also we have, of course, newforma.com, which is where you can find a lot of different information on our products, good ways to contact and set up for demos. You can also view after the fact. This will be posted on demand, and also, like I said, I would highly recommend viewing a couple of the other on-demand webinars we have out there for ConstructEx if you haven't had a chance to, and you want to dig into like the RFI and submittal workflow a little bit more, something like that. That's a great resource as well. So I'm going to say last call on questions from anyone. Anything? All right. Well, thank you everybody so much for joining us today. I really hope you learned some good stuff about ConstructEx that maybe you didn't know before. And again, please contact us, reach out if you have any questions or would like to learn more. We're always happy to take the time to answer that. And have a good day. Stay warm. Take care.